All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December edition of the monthly meeting of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild. It'll be it's our last meeting of the year and our last live meeting for a couple of months probably. Matt will talk more about that here in a few minutes when he talks about program committee. I'm Ed Noy. I'm president of the Guild, and I'm supported by a really good, active, engaged board of directors, many of whom are here tonight. Matt, for instance, program director. George, he deals with all of our supporters and our sponsors. I saw Paul here earlier. Paul Ehrlich, a member at large, also the guy who was a co-chair on the fall seminar, along with Bob Krabby, who you just saw. Who else we got tonight? Who am I missing? I think that's about it for the board of directors. But there's 11 of us on the board now, and we've got some good traction, and we got some really good ideas coming in, and a lot of good support to get our events running. I'd ask that y'all do what I just did and put your cell phone on mute so that we don't interrupt our presenter here. How many people are here for their very first Minnesota Woodworker Guild meeting? Holy cow. Well, usually I'll go around and ask you to stand up and talk to us a little bit, but I think there's too many of you tonight. But welcome. We're glad to have you. We do these informative meetings every month. Well, 10 months a year. 2 of the months, one is fall seminar in November. That's our November meeting. And then April is our Northern Woods exhibition, which is our April meeting. I mentioned George works with our sponsors and our supporters. Many of you are likely members of the Guild because of them, because you can get so many discounts at their retail outfits, 10% down to wholesale prices. We encourage you to support them. They support us in many ways. Let's see. We've run through our gamut of events pretty much for the year, ended up with the Northern Woods, with the fall seminar. The next event that we've got coming up is Northern Woods. The last weekend in April, April 25 through 28 at Eden Prairie Center once again. I can tell most of you probably haven't started on your project for that yet, but you probably better. We'll talk about it every month and remind you every month, but we hope to have a really good show. Let's see. As far as announcements go, we have a number of special interest groups. Do we have any leader here tonight that would like to talk about it? Roger, stand up. Talk about your group. Status.
I'm heading up a group on design, mainly because all the time we have meetings that we want how to cut this, shape that. Our group has been designed and built, and so the basis of having a good piece is having a good design. We talked about design, and since I know everything, I just keep talking.
Don't doubt that.
No, I try not to talk too much. So we've been going once a month. We met at MCAD already, Minnesota College of Arts and Design, and we're hoping that instructor will come and do one of our monthly meetings. He did an excellent job. And we've covered a number of topics: straight lines, groove lines. So it's been good. We're meeting this Wednesday at Maplewood Library. It's down the road here. So if you want to jump in the middle of stuff, 6:30 to 8. Yeah, we don't pick anybody up. We leave it there.
Do we cover any software?
No, we haven't. We could. It wouldn't be my presentation because I don't do nothing.
Very good. Thanks, Raj. We have a second design group that's being run by Steve McClune. I don't have any idea where they are with their efforts these days. We have a luthier mastery group. We have a Windsor chair making group. We have a hand tool group. We have two CNC groups, and we have a box making group. I can tell you a little bit about the box making group. I organized that one. We've been meeting monthly in my shop, which is out in Buffalo. I'm down to 3 diehard box makers, which is great. And we're going to continue to meet for a while here until everybody decides they've had enough of me. Matt, do you want to talk about our upcoming meetings?
In January, we have the shop tours. We have 4 different shops that we went to, and we put them together. People seem to like to watch other people's shops and see what they have. And so I think we'll have fun looking at those 4 different shops. In February, we have Mike Simpson, who's going to do a presentation on different methods of accomplishing the same thing. So he's going to look at how you can maybe make a mortise, but different ways, and which one you might want to choose over the other. So those are the things coming up. And then March, we don't have nailed down yet. We have some folks lined up, and then April is the Northern Wood Show. So
thank you, sir. You and the committee have been doing a really good job. Just, once a week or once every other week, log on to the website, take a look at what we got planned for meetings. As soon as the committee can nail down March, we'll have that up on the website. I want to take a moment right now to talk about a special project that I would really like the Guild to take on. You're going to see a lot of kids here, a lot of really cute kids. They got a lot of beads hanging around their necks and they're holding them and stuff. These kids are fortunate in that they're still here. These kids have all had very significant medical issues over the years. And there's a nonprofit organization that was started out in Arizona. It's international these days. And what they do is they try to inspire these kids and to honor their courage for going through what they go through to get themselves better. And every time they have a procedure done, they get a bead to string on a lanyard or something here. And of course, it gives them the visibility that they've accomplished something, and their parents can be part of that and see what's going on with their kids. And apparently all the clinical staff that deals with these kids think it does a really good job at inspiring them to keep their heads up and to keep moving forward with all these procedures. The Children's Hospital at the university, North Memorial, and I can't remember the other 2, but all the major children's medical facilities and clinics in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area have instituted this program in their pediatric, I won't say intensive care, but their pediatric, like it is intensive care, let's face it. This organization has lots of different kinds of sponsors. One of their sponsors happens to be the Minnesota Woodturners Guild. And Jay Schultz. Jay, where are you? Oh, there you are, sitting right in front of me. So for about 7 or 8 years, Jay has become an ambassador, and he's the guy that coordinates the efforts within the Woodturners. And what the Woodturners do, they make turned boxes. And he brought some of them with him tonight. You can chat with him after the speaker's done and see what we're talking about. But they have turned boxes that these kids keep their beads and their craft projects in while they're in the hospital. And it's really a great thing. So the Woodturners make these on their own. Jay coordinates all of that. He gets them distributed to the various hospitals and clinics. And it's something that the kids can have to keep their precious memories in. Now, it's most unfortunate that not all these kids make it. They go through hell trying to get better, and they don't make it. And that leaves their families with a huge hole in their lives. So what the clinical staffs have done over the years is they provide the parents with a memory box. And in the local area, what they've been doing, they've been purchasing boxes. They're basically padded, fabric covered cardboard boxes. They're attractive, but they're not very special. And this is for the families to keep all the memories, you know, the kids' beads, greeting cards, that kind of a thing. And they asked Jay if he could find somebody that might be willing to make some boxes. So Jay came to us, and I thought, well, you know, this is a really fine idea. So, and we're not talking about anything special, okay? You know, it's a wooden box. It's not cardboard. This is a sample I whipped up one Saturday afternoon a couple of weeks ago. They want a lift lid and just something simple, straightforward. And Jay's a pretty hard guy to work for. He wants like 50 or 60 of these every year, right? I think we could do 100. But, and I need some volunteers. The one volunteer I was most afraid of recruiting was somebody to lead this effort, because I'm not going to do that. And lo and behold, I found somebody that would like to do that. It turns out he was one of my box making students a few years back when I was teaching a class at Edina Community Center. His name is Todd Laubach. And Todd is going to be the coordinator for this effort. He's going to be interfaced with Jay, and then Jay is going to continue to interface with the medical facilities. So tonight, before you leave, I want you to come see me and give me your name. I'm going to put you on the list, and then Todd's going to contact you, and we're going to figure out how we can make 50 or 100 boxes a year for these families. Okay? Good deal. With that, we're going to, has anybody got any announcements they need to make?
Not an announcement, but just a couple quick items, if I might.
Yeah, yeah.
In a move, I am.
So they can hear you.
In a recent move, I uncovered some oil stones. I use wire stones myself. Got small, medium, large carver on them, and some pocket size for knives, scissors, fish hooks, etc. If anybody's interested, just come and see me. Otherwise, they're landfill tomorrow. Thank you. And if I might, for show and tell. Last August, a year ago, I followed Chris Schwarz's Lost Art Press blog, and he showed Jenny Alexander's hacking knife that he had been bequeathed by Jenny Alexander's estate. And he said, we're not going to make this. It was forged by a local blacksmith. Said, Crucible isn't going to make these, so just see your local blacksmith. Well, I had a hard time tracking down a blacksmith who would take this on, because I like handmade things, as I think we all do. But a fellow guild person, David Scadlock, didn't make it here tonight, but he's also a knife maker. And he raised his hand to take a shot at it. And he made me a overly nice hacking knife, but I won't hesitate to hit it with a hammer, but it works really well with just a wooden mallet for splitting out pegs and wedges.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Anything? Hey. Well, Doug, you pass it around. What do you got?
It's for make your own miter gauge.
Make your own miter gauge. All right.
It's the runner. It's the runner for a miter gauge. If you make a lot of jigs.
Ah, okay.
It's also adjustable. Screws into the jig.
All right. Runners for jigs. Doug's our jig guy. Does everybody have a pink ticket? George, or Bob, you could help me, huh? I think this is all the stuff we're giving away.
The number is 310. Wait,
I think you got this
I gotta
backwards.
draw it first?
Yeah,
All right.
no, I'll draw it. You hold up the prizes.
All right. We'll do the sweatshirt.
Let's see.
Farrell,
And if I get 310, I'll throw it away.
Farrell sweatshirt. It's a nice looking sweatshirt.
They're one of our latest supporters. That one goes, last 3 digits, 329. There you go. You can use a sweatshirt tonight.
Your color. Next, we'll do the tight bond thermos. And the hat.
Whoa,
Thermos, keep you warm inside and out.
324.
And
We got Dan. Don't leave that thermos anywhere, Dan. Dan was in my last box group and I had his thermal mug in my shop for 8 months. Oh, saw blades.
saw blade pack. It's like a 4-pack. 4-pack of saw blades.
Number 358.
Right here.
There you go.
All right. Off your chart. DeWalt spring clamps.
We only give away one clamp at a time.
One clamp at a time. Are you sure?
We always give away one clamp at a time.
I thought those Bessie clamps were going. Those are supposed to be Tom's.
We'll give away a pair. Number 331.
All right. You're welcome. Got a set of
Driver bits.
impact driver bits from DeWalt.
Got 2 sets. We'll do one at a time. 348. It goes to David.
Here you go. They're all organized. Here's the next set.
There, next set, 337.
337. Got a Craig portable crosscut.
Wonder what that is.
It's for your
Oh, I see.
circular
It's
saw.
sort of like a
Yeah,
tri-square, but
sweet square.
yeah. Number 364. You're supposed to throw it like a boomerang, see if it comes back.
I'm the only one with safety glasses. We've got a Craig screw organizer, and we'll throw in the router bit storage inserts as well.
It's 366.
All right, he's got a guild shirt already. Nope. Keep the ticket. And the last thing we have, the universal mobile base.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, no donation. Excellent.
Yeah, just add the lumber. Number 357. Goes to Stu.
There you are. Carry that around. I got a trash can back here from the dump it.
Yeah. With that, I believe we are ready to start our program. Who's doing the introductions? I am. Okay. I'll do this off the cuff. All right. So at the Northern Woods exhibition this last April, one of our entries was from Tom. And Tom got himself a commission where he had to make a lot more than one of something. And it's not something simple, it's a chair. You know, a lot of people are scared to death to build a chair. Well, Tom just got over that. And he's here to tell us tonight how he managed to move from, one or two of to multiple hundreds. Tom?
We're just gonna switch some technology over.
Here, let me see it. There, it was on mute.
And are you still on there, Ed? Got switch Max here quick. Matt, are we good with the mic? Great. So, all set, Matt? First, I'd like to thank Matt for helping me get organized, and the committee, and naturally the guild. I've been a member off and on, I have to admit, for some time. Of course, Forest Product Supply for being such a great host. I mean, they're just fantastic. And their staff was really helpful for getting set up and everything. So I really appreciate that. I'll just start off a little bit about myself. I won't go into that too much, just kind of so you know the angle on which I approach the industry. Is this my second career? I started out as a graphic designer and art director. That sprung off of an art degree from Mankato State. But I kind of see it all as design. So it was kind of a transition that I always kind of wanted to make. And that took place about the millennial time. So I've been at this angle for about 22 years. And with that, I guess I'll just start right in. If you've got a really specific question, go ahead and spring it on me as we go. I'll repeat the question for the Zoom. If you've got more of a global question, maybe we'll just have more of a question and answer session at the end. I really appreciate the angle that the committee took, because it really was a journey. And primarily was in swimming in the waters of one-offs, maybe a little bit of production work, relatively commercial work, but this is by far a larger project than I've done before. There's going to be a lot of visual aids. I'll kind of pass those around. If you feel like I haven't gotten one out to you, just kind of holler for, that part of it. I was contacted by HCA Architects some months ago for a proposal and drawings to do 300 chairs for St. Olaf College. And they're now in place. They're for what's termed the Ernest Recital Hall. And if you know anything about St. Olaf College and their music and performance program, it was like, I knew the big flag was up. Like, this is a lifetime opportunity. They just really pride themselves with that part of their education, which is, they're a general college, but, and I really lived at getting to know because it was a committee that I dealt with, and the performance space and everything else, they really pride themselves in their performing arts. This is the original, I don't know if I'm in the way too much, but this is the original chair in Ernest Recital Hall. It's a 300-seat space. It's a noted piece of architecture by a noted architect who is actually down in Northfield. He's since retired, but that firm is still in business. Anyway, that was the space, and that is the original chair, which is this. And the upholstery was definitely failing. Joinery was pretty much failing also. There was a group that was hired to explore revamping this chair, modifying this chair. And I'll touch base on that a little bit later. There were parameters that were set forth
at the onset that I proposed to. This chair sits in too much of a lounge position, which they wanted to get away from. It's a little tougher to get in and out of. But frankly, for an kind of an aging population and a little bit more knowledge about ergonomics, they wanted something that sat more upright, which this chair started to do, but I went too far, and I'll get into that in a little bit. No exposed joinery, which they had lived with for 50 years. They wanted to get away from that. That was challenging, but it was part of the parameters. No heavier than the existing chair, which gave me some room because this is pretty heavy. And that came from one of the professors that did the most moving of the chairs. And it must be stackable. I think from the gate, we were talking like 5 or 6. I stuck with 5. It's a nice number that works as you go up 5, 10, 15 or whatever. And that is because I can go back to that slide. Let's see if I can go back. Oh, I'm going forward. Doing that. Sorry. Here we go. Now I'm used to it. This was actually designed so that you could stack the chairs in the back, reconfigure the space, even move the stage. It's a platform stage that's in pieces. So anyway, that's part of the stacking challenge, is the reconfigurable space for different performance atmospheres. This is really the center point of my presentation and what I really had to concentrate on. If I made one mistake that took like 90 minutes to correct on each chair, that would have ruined me, frankly. So the prototyping, I just kept beating the drum to myself. It's got to be right. The parts have to be right. You know, Henry Ford and Smith & Wesson, they broke that ground and they knew what they were doing. If the parts were screwed up, they were out of business. So I really took that to heart. And you know, and the catchphrase is designed for manufacturing. And issues on any part of the chair would have been ruinous, and so forth. The design, I just kind of review, but the design for manufacturing considerations, repeatable process on fabrication, no additional handwork. I do some handwork, but if you're taking parts on that many chairs and like, oh, that was a little boo-boo, I'll correct that on handwork after CNC or something like that. That would have been really tough. I'll kind of go into a little bit of the CNC thing, but generally speaking, it was about 50% what you would kind of call traditional stationary tool work and 50% CNC work, which I had a lot of help with. Yeah, each part needed to be proved naturally before going to the CNC. And we did a lot of even beta work off the CNC before we went full production. In other words, these 5 chairs here were built before we circled back and went for 300 plus parts on each part for each chair. I did 5 chairs all the way through off the CNC because it was my first time with the CNC and I just knew that that was important for me. And of course, all parts need to be interchangeable. I didn't want to be tuning parts. The proposal included drawings, and I decided they weren't requesting this, but I'm pretty big on quarter scale models. I'm going to pass around this model, I guess, first. And I think that really helped to get things off the ground. A visual aid really helps. It's not really the chair we ended up with completely. It's close, but there was quite a bit of tweaking that went on as we went. I'll start another version of that chair in a minute to hand out. There was an acoustic consideration to the chair, and that's why I'll pass around this chair. And the reason I'm spending some time with this part of the chair changed considerably, but this was the first iteration. And you'll notice that it's got these members that make up a box. I felt I needed that strength from the back to the front of the front legs to the back legs. And the acoustical considerations was they went from an upholstered back, which you can see, to a bentwood. They were requesting a bentwood lamination or at least a solid wood back. And also that the bottom of the chair be a solid surface like plywood or, sheet goods, so that basically the chair is hot. They were hired acoustically hot. They had a consultant and everything. And so I'll pass this chair around, but I'll get back to how I had to get around this box because it was so complicated to build. And I came up with a more elegant solution than that. Oh, if you, sorry, the question is, what does acoustically hot mean? And that's sort of a slang term. Like if you go into a cathedral and you clap your hands, there are a lot of like flat surfaces and there isn't a lot of cloth, maybe, or there might not be a lot of pews in that cathedral or something like that. It's a big open space with a lot of hard surfaces. That's a hot acoustic space. If you go into a space that's got a lot of drapery, a lot of upholstered furniture, a lot of nooks and crannies, that won't be nearly as hot. In other words, you won't get those reverberations from a choir or whatever. You won't get echoing, basically. It's basically echoing versus not echoing. And echoing comes from a hot space. Oh, yeah, I think I did that right, but yep. This is the model that's being passed around. Boy, I didn't realize that my Mac was on low battery. That's not good. Naturally, the chair needed to stack. Did you happen to bring? Thank you very much. We'll need a splitter. I don't normally keep it low on battery. So that was part of it too. If those two chairs catch up with each other, they stack. And that's something I had to prove through the whole thing to feel confident that I was on the right track. Since I was still on model stage, this is a little two-part mold for the bentwood lamination. It's just tiny little thing you can see by the scale of the clamps, and that's for the scale model. This, by the way, is how big the bentwood lamination ended up in the end. This is a prototype. It's not exactly like the chair, but I experimented with, you can see these little bends in the back that I would bend the back of the back leg like that with a bentwood lamination. I abandoned that because I felt that a solid wood would do it, but it was something I experimented with along with the seat back being a bentwood lamination. Yeah, there was several iterations as far as meetings. I first had a meeting with the architectural firm before I got involved with the committee. They sort of handed the committee off to me. I don't know how pertinent this is to this presentation, but HGA was proposing to redo the whole space, but the budgetary concerns wouldn't allow that at the same time as doing the chairs. So they went ahead with the chairs, and the architects kind of left the relationship to me, frankly, with the committee. And that worked for me and against me, but that's basically what happened. And I met with the designers initially, and they said, go. Here I'll talk about my process of getting away from that first design. Thanks, guys. Oh, I guess we're still good with battery. And part of that was to get around that box idea because it just wasn't that elegant. I had to build that box and then cover it, and it just didn't lend that well to stacking because that ate up like 3-4 inches of space just to make that box. So you can see here the chair. I'm probably getting in the way of the screen, but the chair on the left is, or actually your right, still has that box idea. And somewhere along the line, I came up with this sort of Z configuration, as you can see on our right, where it's just a piece of sheet goods that make up that part. So I abandoned that box idea, and I kind of had to catch myself. I was kind of caught up in the idea, oh, this acoustic engineer is going to be after me, and I've got to put a piece of plywood on the bottom of the box. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't have to do the box. Just use it with sheet goods. And part of the reason I was able to think that way is it's an armchair, thankfully, and you get a lot of strength from the arm and on that plane that help the front to the back. So I started relying on just a single sheet there. And we kind of termed that the Z seat. There you can see the chair starting to come along. I still had the same arm on this first iteration, and this is that chair. And this pretty much follows the model. I'm just going to kind of toss things around because there's no other way for you to kind of see things. We're onto the Z seat already, as you can see, and the upholstered part is separate. I can pass a few things around, but the arm goes over the top of the front leg, which I eventually changed, and they were really on me to change this attachment point. Chairs, especially when you get into commercial chairs or really any type of structure that supports something, I go into like thinking about attachment points, like how is this going to relate to that? And you kind of break things down and theoretically about attachment points. Anyway, they were very concerned about this attachment point and how it wasn't very elegantly solved so far. And I kind of had a mental block about it. I tried all kinds of different things. The models even show like a dowel running there. For example, I thought that might be a solution. Here I kind of have a cove, which works with, you know, round legs, but it's not that elegant and kind of fussy to make and attach and run dowels with and everything else. So I was just all over the road there still, and I knew they were on me for it. They were aware of it, and I hadn't solved it yet. I'll show this while I'm still thinking about it. You know, one of the trickiest things is not showing any hardware. And what I came up with for the seat back is these guys, which are, you might recognize them. They're used a lot like on acoustical panels and things like that. And it worked out so slick. As long as I kept the tolerances fairly tight, that's how I handled the lack of hardware there. A lot of times you'll see a commercial chair they'll screw into it, but you can barely get, you don't have that much meat here to get a screw into. And then you gotta, if you want no hardware showing, then you gotta, you know, hardwood cap those off. And it just got really clumsy in my mind. Like, I don't want to be sanding that flush and capping them off and running screws into the back. This allowed me to, you know, kind of like go a little bit more screw for screw. Like, all right, I mean, there's hardly any meat before I get into the meat of this. So I could really have a nice solid screw going in on these plates. And again, here, you know, I'm inside this cove and could really get the screws to hold strongly. And that's how I solved the no hardware showing there. While I'm thinking about it, I also had to think about what they call ganging. And you'll notice here, I originally went with aluminum, kind of like puzzle pieces for the ganging. In a commercial space, sometimes there's even like fire code things where they can't just have chairs everywhere. They've got to be ganged so that like people don't like start moving the chairs around, frankly. And so I could not find something for ganging on the commercial market. I mean, I looked for weeks, and a lot of it was like, well, this is a chair from Knoll that kind of works with this thing, and it's a little piece of plastic or whatever, or something, you know, that's sort of flimsy, you know, that's imported, and nothing decent. And so these I actually cut these on CNC. I'll pass these around too. That was like the last piece I made. Wasn't really the last thing I solved. And I switched to what's called in the industry paper stone. It's a really tough forest product for that, which I could run on the CNC. And it was a little easier than aluminum. I would have had to farm out the aluminum to a more of a metal CNC.
What is this product?
I'm sorry.
What's it made of?
It's called Paper Stone, but that's a name brand like Kleenex. It's like a neoprene or it's basically layers of paper, but they use like I'm gonna call it a really tough adhesive between those pieces of paper. It's a forest product, but it's the slang term is paper stone. I just picked it up locally. You'll see it in like tougher environments like labs for the countertops and things like that where it's got to be tough. If you Google paper stone, you'll see it.
You did the milling on it?
Yes, we ran those on the CNC. Yeah, we just laid out like hundreds of them because it was like it came in like actually 4x10, but we ran like a 4x6 sheet of it, just hundreds of them. We had to make 300 pairs. So there, I'm proofing the ganging again with that first prototype. And there's that chair. Now, what happened next is this chair went to the committee. And if you want to hang out later, all these visual aids, you can sit in them. I mistakenly thought I had nailed the chair as far as getting it to more of an upright position, but I went too far. It's kind of like it just sits too erect. It's not very comfortable. And I didn't realize it until I got down there. And I'm with the committee. And one of, like a cellist sat down and said, well, this is more like a cellist chair. This is way too far forward. This would be great for performance. And she was right. And I was really stuck. And to boot, I was going head to head in the same room with people that were doing the modification on this chair. And he literally took a victory lap, like, well, looks like I'm in a good spot. And he went further in explaining his ergonomics. And I'm like, oh my God. I went into that meeting thinking I had it 80-20 in the bag. I actually know the people that were behind the modification. They're great. But I felt all the momentum was going towards a new chair. It's going to be too fussy to redo the new chair. And I licked my wounds all the way back from Northfield. Like, what am I going to do? I had weeks into this, and I had only asked for a small foundation budget to start designing this thing. And I just went on faith that I felt pretty good about it. Anyway, I got back to Minneapolis, and I thought, after about a day of that, licking my wounds, I am going to go back to the committee and see if I can ask for about 3 weeks to come up and correct that problem. And I got in the studio, and I just started throwing things out outside of correcting the chair as far as position, that were far more elegant, and they just started falling into place. It was really crazy. Yeah, after review, it became clear that the back angle was just sitting way too far forward and too far upright. I went too far as correcting the lounge position. And as I said, I went to work and I basically ended up making a far more elegant chair. This, I think, is the last iteration of some prototyping, kind of a midterm chair, but it doesn't show that much. But this, as far as the final solution, but this is the sort of thing I did, got clamps out, played with arm heights, seat positions, etc. Like I said, attachment was an ongoing concern, especially that back leg to arm attachment. This you can see where I was playing with that original arm on its position with the leg. Detail of that. Anyway, I got in the studio, and this is the arm that I started coming up with. And this arm attaches from the back to the leg in front rather than over the top like this one does. I'll bring out this other chair. So this started to integrate a new I'll even take this off, easier to see. You know, it integrates the Z seat, the new position of the arm, and really more importantly, the attachment of the back leg. I'll pass around this piece, and this is kind of core to the point I want to make. I was in the studio late nights quite often, and I literally hadn't solved this yet. And I was on the router table, and I was going to make a leg like this, where it's all rounded off. And I had to change my hand positions on this or on the router table. And I stopped. And I looked at the piece and said, what am I thinking? I've got a flat position on this leg if I stop. And I had that blind spot the whole time I was working. And I didn't find it on drawings. I found it on the router table. And that led kind of simultaneous to this arm and bringing this arm up to the front, like I said, of this position rather than that position on the arm, et cetera. I'll pass this around, but that is literally how I came up with that. And everything sort of followed from there on the new chair. Rather than making this arm where it switches, I mean, I wanted this strength back here, but then I realized, why don't you just make the whole thing this deep? Because then it will ride on the arm and when it's stacked rather than the seat when it's stacked, which is always sloppy because then you're on upholstery. So anyway, this little piece of stuff, you know, this took a series of maybe 4 days and it's like changed the chair. When I went back to the committee, I felt I should come up with this presentation, which kind of goes over the benefits of the chair, a lot of them which I've outlined, the Z seat, that I've solved the elegance of the back, it stacks on the arms, you know, et cetera, that I corrected the seat, the sitting position, et cetera. It just kind of pulled it together. Frankly, I pretty much had to drop the second chair off. So I needed this sales tool because I wasn't going to get in the same room with that committee again. All this took place during the middle of COVID, which I should have mentioned earlier. For example, when I went head to head with this chair and this modified chair in the same room, we were all in masks. They were barely able to like all show up because they were afraid. We were in the middle of the pandemic. And that, I don't know, it is what it was, but I think it changed my relationship with the architect because they just wanted to hand it off because COVID was going on. We didn't have that many meetings. Some of the meetings were outside with the committee because of COVID. It really ramified everything. But anyway, I felt I needed an additional sales tool. I know a corporate communicator that I've had a relationship in the past, and the art direction my art direction background and his background in communications, we came up with this, and we had very little time, like maybe 3 days to come up with that piece of paper. And I gave that to each person on the committee. So there's the new chair starting to take shape. You can see I'm integrating the new arm to front leg position, the Z seat, everything kind of started falling together. I don't know what I've got for verbiage there. Yeah, Z seat plus attachment. There's a detail of, I'm standing in the way, detail of the arm there. You can see that in rough form. This is probably like still in like pine, just getting stuff done, or I had some oak around. I'll start this Z seat, for example. I'll start passing this around. Be a little, I should probably bend this nail over. We dropped this one. So I have this one as a sample of what went on. You can see the cove work.
I'm reminded of Harvard's
one thing I
motto,
should mention,
Veritas,
this is another,
which goes back,
I'll
and it's
give this
older
to
than
you
the
in a
founding
moment.
of our country. It goes back to the
This is another correction
1640s.
of a blind spot.
In addition, the motto
can
was
see on this
Veritas
chair-
Christo et Ecclesiae, truth for
And I knew
Christ
I was
and the church.
making a disaster
Larry
for
Summers,
myself,
who was
and you
president of
don't want to
Harvard
do
when I
it
was
300
undergrad,
times.
talked about the meaning
This
of
chair
Veritas is divine
Is all plywood here,
truth.
and then this
Moral
is
truth. Let me
a
be clear.
band, you know,
Veritas
of banding that you would
not
see in cabinet maker or whatever. And this
depend
inside curve is really difficult
This
and
is
fussy.
a failure of
You got to
Harvard's
clamp
leadership
that somehow. You got to. It's
and
a lot.
higher education
Frankly, it's some
at the
handwork,
highest
etc.
levels.
And I'm like, well,
And
I don't know what I'm gonna
change
do
they
there.
have made to
I
their
want to
code
use a
of
piece of
conduct,
plywood,
where they
um,
failed to condemn calls
and I
for
want to use sheet
genocide
goods there.
of the Jewish
And
people.
then I realized,
The only update to the code of conduct
just
is
take
to allow
hardwoods
a plagiarist
both
as the
sides
president of
and give yourself enough room for this curve.
Shifting
Attach that.
gears to what
You
is on
can't
the
see
floor
that, but this
week.
is all
I wanted to highlight the National
tongue and groove
Authorization
together
Act.
here.
I'm a
I
proud member
bought
of
a
the House
shaper
Armed
for
Services
that.
Committee.
And
Our
so
speaker and our
anyway,
House Republican
another
Conference
discovery
and our
that got me
committee
around
members
that
have done
banding,
tremendous
which would have
work.
been for
I
my
wanted to
shop
highlight the
really
Parents'
hard.
Bill of Rights provision, which I know the
don't even
speakers
really need the
fought
front of
very
that
hard
Z to
for, that
pass
we're very
around.
proud to have in the bill that I authored and garnered bipartisan support in the House. But unfortunately, Democrats fought hard to keep that out.
There
Our
were just
speaker
playing.
got
I had
that
some help.
provision in.
No, it's the sort of
And I
things you
also
do. You
wanted
just
to
hold the
highlight,
back in position and
Chairwoman
start playing with it.
Dolores Rogers' tremendous
There's a
work
webbing
the
on,
healthcare package, standing up for patients to
pass this
lower
around. One of
costs
these
and
is
bring more
loose.
transparency in the healthcare space. Specifically
The
highlighting
seat, it not only had to have like about a 3/4 inch of high density foam, but they requested webbing. It's just a lot more comfortable. You don't bottom out in the chair like you do in foam. And that came from the architect, but I solved everything about that. We use an upholsterer. I did my own strapping, which was interesting, very hard on the hands. And I had some help from different people around the shop. There's 2 of the prototypes. There's a chair again. I'll just touch base on part of the design for manufacturing. I don't have a digital background that's all that strong. There was a member I am in a shared shop. It's called Minneapolis Make. And there was a young person there that I started developing a really strong acquaintance with. And I knew that was his specialty with, in fact, it's a group that's akin to Wood from the Hood. He works there in their cabinet making. It's a spinoff. And we sat down for some really serious meetings eventually, like, can we take this digitally? Can I buy a CNC? Could you help me with that? This is how I handled the drawings. This is the drawing for the original chair. I just took a 4x8 sheet of signboard because I knew I needed a great big piece of paper. And I have enough drawing background to know that the great big pieces of paper are a pain in the ass. So I just bought signboard and started drawing. And what's really critical with a chair is views, especially the side view, I learned. Because everything in a modern chair kind of comes to focus on the side view. You can walk up to these later because the lines are sort of faint and erased and then drawn over, et cetera. But you can see how this first chair, how that came up to the arm, et cetera. And so anyway, that's how I worked out the views on the drawing. So when it started to change on me, I said, all right, we got to start a new piece of signboard. So back to Cywick. And came up with this drawing. Oh, sorry, CNC. No harm, no foul. So I probably brought these with because I wanted to talk about the relationship with this young gentleman and how I got it to the CNC. And this is the drawing that he eventually came up with, which is the same exact chair. And I can kind of pass this around. So you can come up and see it. Sorry about that. I was going to tuck this in. But, we just sat down for, a big session and I pulled dimensions off of that drawing. And he started creating these files. And it was really gratifying because, for example, it's kind of analog versus digital. And in other words, like even with these angles, I was pulling angles and dimensions and everything else. And his angles and dimensions were matching my angles and dimensions within like a 64th of an inch. And so, I mean, I really concentrated on these drawings being accurate because I knew we were going to go to this. And I didn't want the chair to change. And I knew how critical that was going to be, that all the parts were interchangeable. That was like the link that was so important to us both. And he was really a specialist there. I ended up buying the CNC, but and running the CNC quite a lot. But that was a critical point in the project, was linking the hand rendered drawings to the digital files. And again, all these things you can come up and look up later. I just figured I might as well bring all the visual aids. So it's kind of a lot, but so basically it's we went to CAD, which was 3D AutoCAD, and then CAM was VCarve. Those are name brands of the software that we were using. There's the chair stacked. There's there we're clamping the full size bentwood lamination backs. I can pass this around. That was, we made the forms on CNC. You can see it's a big solid particle board chunk. I felt we needed to engineer a lot of pressure. I used like 1/2-inch bolts, series. You can't have them in the field, but they're off to the side. They're helping a lot. And then we had a lot of hand screws. And so I built 10 sets of these. I figured it was going to take me 30 days. So every day, me and an assistant would say, let's make 10 more backs. And it was amazing. We just brushed the glue on, got it into the form, got into a rhythm. And over 30 days, we made 300 backs. Is there a question? I got a paperback veneer for the show sides. I'll pass around a back. It's from, I looked around for veneer, and in the end, I used the same group that Woodcraft and Rockler use for their stuff. They're called Sawyer veneers. And I got 4x8 sheets of, I went with close grain or rift cut veneers. It was just so much simpler for me to think about. I'll talk a little bit about the cathedrals versus just close grain veneers. But anyway, I just got the veneers from, oh, I didn't repeat the question. The question was, where did I get my veneer stock from? Or what did I use for veneers? And like I said, it's paperback veneer from Sawyer. And they're a big veneer company. And I used, for both the front and back, their show sides, I used this paperback veneer. And then I had enough with those sheets that I could use one ply in the very middle. So there's it doesn't show, but they weren't the nicest veneers. I took the ones that weren't quite as fancy, and I used those as an interior veneer. But then, so that makes up only like, say, not even an eighth yet, those three veneers. And then we used wiggle board. And I, for the life of me, could not find a medium thick veneer company. That is a really high industrial thing. You've got to be playing at such a level or something to buy, like the people that make plywood. And I went online and I talked to a guy that did a lot of form work. And he said, Tom, I found him on like a YouTube, and he was really good. He took my call. He says, oh, I have so much success with wiggle board. Just buy bendable ply and use that for your interior. So that's how I did it. I used Type on Type 3. That's kind of my go-to glue. I call it instant furniture. I use it for everything. I rely on the strength a lot. It's a pretty indestructible product, and it makes for an indestructible chair. So anyway, that's how we did the bentwood lamination.
Hey, Tom, we got a question from the Zoom. What program was used to convert the signboard drawings to the digital? The CNC problem?
Yeah, I go back to that slide only to spur my memory. We used AutoCAD 3D. That's about as much as I can tell you about it. And then VCarve is the path that's created on the CNC. And I've got videos of the CNC. This program couldn't handle video, but I got a couple of videos from the CNC. And one of them is the back, and one of them is like a leg or something, where we're on the CNC creating that piece. There's the raw backs as they come out of the forms. It's really, if you haven't done bent wood lamination, give it a shot sometime. It is so gratifying. This is the lower part of the form. And I let them sit overnight. I didn't take any chances. But you come back the next day and you pull apart those, and it's kind of messy because some of the glue kind of gets on the form. But you pull apart that big block form and you pull out this thing that's fully formed, and it's like, wow, it's crazy. I never got tired of it. Anyway, that's a couple of those that are just fresh out of the mold. Was there a question? Oh, sorry about that. I really should have tucked this in before I. Was there a question?
Repeat your question.
Oh, what's the treatment of the, yeah, let me talk about the form a little bit more. Ignore this for now, but this treatment, because this came up later, and I meant to talk about this. I decided that I needed a little bit of cushion, more than the particle board had. And so I took and lined both the top and bottom form with like vinyl. I just went to Axeman or something and bought like several layers of vinyl and spray mounted them on the forms. I mean, I read up, I saw what other people were doing, but some of it was just my instinct. Like, I know I want some give there. I know that these are too rigid to get those plies together the way I want them to, even with all that pressure. And so I lined them with vinyl to have a little bit of like a 16th inch of give on each side with still pressure that was averaged with that vinyl. Then we took the same form. This is going to become very apparent when I go to video. We took that bottom form and we put this right on the CNC, and we made this a vacuum form. So you can see the bottom that allowed the vacuum to come up to the top of this form. And I put that raw form on there, and the CNC then went around and milled this out in place rigid. So we used one of the same forms for our template on the CNC. So you can come up and look at this. And this is where Patrick is his name. Really had a lot of brainstorming with him on some of the technology and things like that. But anyway, this is a different type of material. It's the same. It's ubiquitous with trying to hold down templates on like a CNC situation where the vacuum's got to seal this down. But it's very similar to vinyl, but it's a different iteration on that piece. This gets into how I attach the pieces onto the Z-seat. I really struggled. I'm a big believer in domino. I don't know if I'm going long here. It doesn't feel like I am, but and originally I felt I needed the strength of the domino for the Z-seat. And I got in there and it was just too rigid. This thing has what I would term a bird's mouth in the front and back. You might be able to see it on the seat that's being passed around. And it's got to kind of slip into that bird's mouth and have, in the first case, these dominoes working at the same time as that bird's mouth. And it was just too rigid. The two wouldn't work together. So I switched to biscuits and it just fell into place. And that was kind of later on. I guess maybe I figured it out when I was to this chair or so, but it was late in it and it really worked out great. Just switching to biscuits. I could get the biscuit joiner in there a little bit better. You might be able to see what I mean when you see the Z seat that's being passed around. This is where I was clamping the front and back onto the Z seat, those two shoulders. And you can come up and look at this, but I'll just hold it up. This is as simple as my jig got. We're pushing that together. And I will say this, if you don't know about Bessie and how advanced their clamps are and why they're so dominant, if you're up against something like this, you know it. All I did was make this little frame, drop it into those grooves, throw these Bessie clamps on, which I never owned before. I owned some knockoffs of these and they were terrible. And it just turned that whole process around. And when you're doing something 300 times, you don't want to be fussing around too much. Anyway, that's all it took to make this jig. And to push those biscuits and everything together. There, you can see we're putting those straps on. Those are upholstery staple guns. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Again, we had to have things worked out. And there's a weave pattern. I don't know if it was apparent in what I passed around. But, and you had to have some hand strength. And some people wore gloves. I did a fair number of these. These are some of the people that helped me out with that part. Here we are on the CNC with the back leg. I'll pass that around. Just like I said, we would start things in pine just to get a form going. We could only go so far. We did everything with quarter round router bits, either on the router table or on the CNC. To make a round thing, we were going a quarter round at a time. And I'll send around this oak one also. You'll see why you gotta kind of account for some waste because sometimes it chips out, etc. I'll pass around the oak one also. Might have some splintering there because of the chip out, but all right. Any questions? If so, I mean, we would go up on the CNC with several to be efficient on programs. These are called pods. These green things in the back. I meant to bring a pod with, but they're just sitting there now. But you'll see some pod situations where it's got to be up above the table so you can get it more in the round. They're basically vacuum pods, and they're working off that grid system with a hole that's drawing vacuum through them. Yeah, I settled on, I'm trying to think exactly what it was. It's been a while. I think, it was 1 3/4 inches. And I only remember that because initially I looked for dowel stock. I thought about maybe the front leg, I would just farm out dowel stock. And that was like 1.5 inches was too thin and 2 inch was too big. And some groups had, but then I abandoned buying dowel stock. But 1 3/4 inches seemed to be just the right size. And so I bought a lot of 8/4 red oak. I'm glad you bring that up. The architects actually spec'd it in white oak. And I went online and that's where I found that photograph of the original interior. And it was in red oak. I mean, this architect specified this beautiful red oak interior. And I went back to the architect, I went back to the designer and it's like, do you mind that I do this in red oak? Because it's a red oak, environment. And they agreed. I think they just got attracted to white oak because it's far more trendy right now. And it is beautiful, in like craftsman type furniture, etc. Anyway, I convinced them to switch to red oak, which saved me a lot of money and a lot of trouble. I wouldn't have been able to get the veneer as easily. Red oak, white oak, especially by now, is like maybe 50% more expensive. It's crazy. So anyway, that worked out good. Here you can see we're trimming out that form that you saw in order to get that waste away so we can get it back on the CNC for the other side, to quarter round it from the other side. There's all the arms being laid up. I guess that's 8 chairs at a time or 16 arms. Well, I'm talking about the arm. If the arm comes back up here, I'll talk about that a little bit more. That's all the arms. So you kind of can see the amount of just storage that you need for something like this. This is the finish room at Make. I decided to rag hand finish the whole job. I did not spray this job. I've never considered myself very professional at spraying. I mean, rattle can, maybe a little bit past that. And it just made sense. I even consulted Kevin Southwick and he said, yeah, just rag it on. It took a lot of time, but getting 3 coats of polyurethane on this project, it just made the most sense to just rag it on. I used General Finishes and armor seal, and it's how I went about it. This gets into some of the assembly we had. Go ahead.
With the rag finish, it will level out.
Oh yeah, I mean, oh sorry. He's just asking if a rag finish on with polyurethane is going to level out nice. With 3 coats, I mean, I'll go into it a little bit more. With the first coat, you're going to raise the grain quite a bit. We knew that we were going to be sponge sanding at about just maybe 120 grit on that first, and you get a pretty nice surface. And we sanded after the second coat also. And those coats, if you're going to go for 3 coats, which is a good average, they're not that thick. I mean, we didn't get any drips. And I've never had any trouble with General Finishes leveling. It's really fantastic. So
Solvent or aquaspace?
it's oil based. Yeah. I've messed around a little bit with water based. Depends on the project, but with the beauty of red oak, no doubt, I was not going to use a water based finish.
And one more question.
Yeah.
It was hand
I'm
sanded
sorry.
between coats?
Yes. The flexibility of sponges gave us, nice on the round. We did a lot of sanding before we went to finish, and we used attachments that got us on the round. Festool has some attachments on some of their sanders for round objects that were matched really closely, but we were in the sanding room for it's ridiculous amount of time to get the shapes cleaned up a little bit. If you are meticulous about your routing and shaping pieces, meticulous about your CNC work, you can get it pretty clean, but there's quite a bit of sanding before we even started. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm not repeating the questions, but.
Did you consider a wipe on polyurethane?
That's what we used. Yeah, we used the viscosity of a wipe on. And it depends if you're just going to thin out a regular polyurethane. Mine came prepared that way. It was a wipe on polyurethane. Yeah. I use rags a lot. That's how I work.
Make all 300 at a time, or you can make them in batches of 50.
Yeah, my theory, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. The question was, did you make all 300 at a time or did you do them in batches? I considered like a 100 at a time batch or something like that. Where my mind stuck mostly was get through this chair, these first 2 were all handwork before we went to the CNC. Prove that, go to the 5 chairs off the CNC. So I know that I'm very confident that I can get 300 parts that are good. And then we went to all 300 parts. Yeah, everything past the 5 chairs was 300 at a time. In fact, it was more like 340 at a time because I knew that there might be a chip that I wouldn't want, or I went over just to make sure that I get the 300 chairs. But yeah, it just seemed like there would be a lot of back and forth, especially on the CNC. Once you're on the CNC for like that arm, for example, you don't want to come back to it. You know, that's maybe an hour program to get 16 arms off that thing. You don't want to revisit that. A month later, late nights, back on the CNC with an arm. That's how it started to reveal itself. He knew that, Patrick had experience with that, but I knew that from doing the beta, the 5 chairs, that we're not going back. We want, and that's why I had, you know, so many iterations before I felt confident, and why I did 5 rather than just maybe 1 or 2 chairs or messed around with a part. I put 5 chairs together before I went to 300. Oh, yeah, this is where we're, sorry, starting to assemble the chair. And we had a code, we called this the L, which is just the front leg to the arm. And we did all the chairs front leg to the arm. I even had a whiteboard where I went, you know, and coded it like arm to front leg to back leg makes a U, and then U to Z seat from both sides. Really had to think about it. I mean, and in the end, what I did was, and I had to think about it because I wasn't sure if I wanted to put like the front of the chair together and the back of the chair together, like 2 legs and the cross member, and then try to put it together. That didn't make any sense. So I had to like think, let's do a U from both sides, get those together, and then clamp them onto the Z seat. So that became apparent maybe when I started getting about this far with the alpha on the reiteration. But that was important to me to make sure I knew how it was going to go together. There we're at the U stage. So we've got the front arm, the front leg, the arm, and the back leg together, all 300 of them. And all pre-finished, by the way. As you saw in the finishing room, all the parts were finished before I started putting them together. That's just how I work. I hate crawling around stuff, and especially with cabinet making, I pre-finish everything. There's how crazy it got in at Make on the main floor of assembly. You can see all the parts. Now they're at the stage of taking the 2 U's and putting it on the Z seat, and then got to throw clamps on it. Again, the Bessie clamps worked out great. And I am really fussy about glue. I'm a wet on wet guy, and I hounded these guys every day, like, get enough glue on there. Get the dowels wet. You see stuff coming out of major high-end manufacturers, and they don't get enough glue on stuff, and it makes me crazy. I've done a lot of restoration, and it's like, there's no glue on the dowels. No wonder it failed. So anyway, that's assembly. Was there a hand going up?
We had a question from Zoom about how many board feet of oak did you use for?
I'll go into some of my shame there a little bit. Boy. Yes, the question, I wasn't sure about the Zoom call. The question is, how many board feet of red oak did I go through? The 8-quarter, I mean, you could figure it. It was thousands of board feet, maybe 4,000 board feet of 8-quarter red oak. And then there had to be 5-quarter. And I did not, this is not a 3/4 inch piece. I went to 5/4 and went to 1 inch to get a nicer cove. And I can talk about the coving later, but anyway, it was crazy. One thing I learned, guys, do not keep hardwoods outside for any length of time. You can tarp it. You can do whatever you say that's going to protect that wood. You got to get it under a roof. That's all I'll say about it. I paid the price. It's all high quality wood, but I had to throw a little bit away. There's the finished product at St. Anthony College in Ernest Hall. So most of it I got at Metro. They're big. They're truly, what do you want to call it? Wholesale prices. Everything else in the Twin Cities starts to creep a little bit more towards not as good a wholesale rate. They're really competitive, and they're really huge. I was just big enough, and I had an account established already there. So, yep. I got a little bit from industrial. They're great folks, right in north. But I used Metro mostly. Oh, the question was, where did I get my red oak? I think I did repeat the question. Got to get used to that. I have a couple of videos I can show, which are fantastic. They're off of the CNC. Go ahead. It was an 18-month project from even a little longer than that, from that initial email from the architect through delivery was over 18 months. And I would say a solid third of that was prototyping, especially in time. In effort, no. I mean, once we got into production, it was a lot more effort, but it took over a year and a half for me to do it. And they were pretty impatient by then.
One more question. Did you have a previous relationship with the architect? In other words, how did you get the job?
Glad you brought that up. Oh, sorry. The question is, did I have a previous relationship with the architect? And I didn't want to go into the story too far, but since you brought it up, it's fantastic. I did a residential credenza for a couple, let's just say 4 years ago. I sold it through a store that I had a relationship with then. I never met them. I delivered that residential credenza to their home. I met the husband. It was not that fantastic house. It was in part of St. Paul. Like, okay, they can afford this apparently, and never thought about it again. Like I said, I never met her. I only met half the couple. The initial email that I got from HGA Architects was from the designer's assistant. So I didn't recognize her name. I wouldn't have recognized the designer's name either, but it was the woman that I did the residential credenza for. So I worked on this project for 6 weeks. I got all the way to almost this chair, this chair, before I knew that it was coming from a referral from that residential credenza, only because I was too bashful to ask. Yeah, it was just sort of like, I didn't want, how did you find me? And then it revealed itself. I just asked her point blank in the first Zoom call, like, because it went so well, I just posed 2 questions. I asked, is there competition? And that was the redoing of this. And how did you find me? And she said, Tom, you built our residential credenza. This is Ariel. Like I should know her. It was mind blowing. So yeah, you never know who you're talking to. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm in a position to swim in those waters now, but I had never. I maybe met. A friend of mine's an architect. I maybe presented to 1 or 2 architects my whole life, and HGA Architects is like the premier. They're one of the largest firms in the nation, much less Twin Cities. It's like, it's a huge staff, and they're calling on me. It's like, what's going on with this? So yeah, and I didn't find out for like the first 6 weeks.
Did the commission include any special chairs, extra large or otherwise?
No, it's a 24-inch per chair, including the ganging. So that width was specified from them, and that's pretty generous. So they considered that with all the chairs. They had enough room that there wasn't any larger chairs or anything made. Did I repeat the question? I don't think I did. The question was there any special chairs that were of a different dimension? And no, all 300 were the same dimension. There was some talk of a little different chair in the balcony, and that went away. As you can see, there's chairs up there. They're all the same chair.
Is there a significance to the different color seats?
It's what you call a calico color scheme. Oh yeah, he's asking, is there significance about the color scheme, the different colors on the chairs? They had initially I thought they had a better color scheme because I was really involved with the fabrics eventually because they handed that off to me. And they had like an apple green, and they had 5 colors chosen. And then the committee didn't want green anymore. I mean, I could go back to the original slide, but they were tired of green, like a lot of people are tired of green. They don't like green. So it was up to me to kind of corral the stray cats of the committee and deal with the color again. And then it got tossed back to the architect. And there's actually 3 colors. There's an orange, there's a red, and there's an earth tone. But the orange and red are parked pretty close together, and I had nothing to do with that. But it's a calico scheme. And that came from the mid-century aspect of the original chair. Does kind of an homage to that. They wanted to keep that. And you'll see that, you know, in different commercial seating where they'll go to multiple color palette.
How much help did you
The-
have? Like, how many people ended up working on the project?
Luckily, I was in a group situation and there were a lot of, frankly, young people. And I just tapped them occasionally. They just helped me out. Patrick was very influential. He was pretty much on staff along with his job. But I mean, I would say loosely, 6 people touched the project. I would, and yeah, around that. I can go to the videos. I will imagine. Go ahead.
Can we make it more of it?
There's a square. I call it a rectilinear version. Oh, sorry. The question is, am I going to make any more of these? Am I going to turn into a chair maker? I'll answer it more broadly first. I'm nearly 64 years old. And I know what contract furnishing is all about. You've got to have a factory, you've got to have a staff, there's marketing. I actually had a short stint when I was a graphic designer with a contract furnishing company called TUI Furniture out of Chatfield, Minnesota. And I got a glimpse of it. I know what it takes. And you know, I could dabble in it, but boy, it's a big undertaking. But and then to answer your question more specifically, there's a rectilinear chair that I've drawn that I decided not to show to the committee because I know that we were paying homage to the original chair, which had a round theme, and it would just confuse them. But I was tempted to show them that, and I didn't have time on that second one. But there's a whole nother chair just sitting there ready for me to make that would stack and everything. And I know the industry doesn't have it competitively. I could make a chair that would make a splash, but it's tough. You know, you're up against TUI. There's another one in southern Minnesota. They compete with Knoll. And you're competing with Knoll. You know, so I might, but it's an open question. Any more questions before I go to video? Yep. That's another good question. But, oh yeah, did I make a special arrangement with the workspace? It helped. It's a private makerspace. In other words, someone owns it and people, it's like a health club that's owned and only for woodworkers. And it helped that one of the owners was an alumni of St. Olaf. I worked that pretty hard. Yeah, Theo Noble is the owner. I happen to know that he was an alumni. He's like, Theo, it's for St. Olaf College. And so he, you know, but by the time, and his partner in life, female, her name is Dan. By the time I got done, Dan was like, no more chairs. I mean, because you could see that one slide. I mean, I took a big footprint, but you know, there's only so many people in that shop at one time. I don't think I got in the way. I was kind of starting to get in the way some, no doubt. So it's a good question. I managed to pull it off. Oh, one little detail. The CNC was in my own space and some of the other work was in another spot, but.
Without, you know, rebuild the cost, but was it financially worth it?
Yes. I didn't have to do a lot of investigating to kind of figure out, I won't go into too much detail, what the budget was going to be like. And it was worth it. It was tough, you know, and I have some equipment. I'm a little over equipped right now for someone of my scale, but totally worth it. Just kind of a really good experience. And yeah, and just rising to that level of the design challenge for me was was once in a lifetime.
Sue wants to know how big the CNC was.
It's a 5x10 Laguna tool change, kind of the first entry level where you get into automated tool change. Yeah, sort of entry level industrial. Solidly one mark down from what you see in here, which is truly production, but entry level production CNC. I can switch to some videos that are pretty interesting. Sorry. But
The total cost on that, how much was profit? Percentage.
I'll give you a range of what a chair like this goes in the market. And I would say we're talking getting close to $1,000, not under $1,000, to maybe double that for a really nice commercial chair in a setting like this. I won't tell you where I was parked. But what was the rest of your question? Oh, the question was, what percentage could I keep?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, that's so hard to say. I mean, there was rent involved, overhead, new equipment. I could keep a third. You know, I don't know.
I'm just looking because I want to know how much I should price it nice.
Yeah, I can take that up with you in the end. It's surprising what the contract furnishings industry will support. And I think it's based on what the market will support, what designers are willing to specify. And at the high end, it's big money. I mean, there's medium-sized conference tables that are worth 10 grand, no problem. I just revealed kind of where these waters lie as far as a chair that goes into a nice space, what they're kind of expecting to pay. And it's not chump change. I can go to the videos pretty simply, I think. How are we doing on time?
8:17.
Oh, that's a while. But they are pretty interesting. I think I can get to it pretty quickly. Oh, let's see now. Kind of ready for this. Oh. Videos, that should work. This first one I'm going to show you is the vacuum form up for with the seat. I think I have the right one. Yeah, I'll just run the video. That's what's called pecking. That's giving me the location for the screws, which is kind of nice. And here you can see the tool roughing out that shape. I mean, this is a frame speed that's speeding everything up, and then I show the piece coming off there. And like I said, this is the vacuum form, and we just took one of the actual blocks from the glue up.
Video, what speed was that run at? Did that run at 5 times per volt?
Oh, more than that. I think I only had one thing on my iPhone. Oh, the question is, what speed was that? I would say that was probably what may even say on there. How long that was, maybe took 3 minutes, and you saw that it was down to 15 seconds. I'll show one with the arms, maybe. I think this is a good one. This CNC with the arm. Excuse me, that's the back leg. You can see it's kind of got that hockey stick form. And that's the same piece that I passed around. We trimmed it out. And I went back to the router table for that back side. Yeah.
You did those by hand.
On the back side, yeah, and the same for the front leg. I got the first round, then we cut them out, and then I went to the front leg I did on a shaper. I actually passed those through a shaper, and that was interesting setup, but they came out really well. Tried to position as many of the dowel holes on the CNC as I could, but even some of those, you know, we were off on another axis and had to go into a form, and we hand drilled those. You'll see some of the things here. The question was, did I repeat the question? No. Sorry. The question was, did I have to go to the other side, or what was the question exactly? Yeah, we went onto a bandsaw and trimmed that out rough, and then I went to a router, and got that really close to that, just that block form, and then I went onto the router table because I had to have, you know, that index back to that perfect right angle on the bottom.
Question.
Yeah, sure.
Why did you not figure out how to do it on the CNC?
Some of it's impossible.
No, it's not.
Well, I was consulting with Patrick,
Okay.
and I trusted him, and I had enough experience on the router table from this iteration to know where it was going to be faster. To be honest with you, we learned enough that it's not always easy to go onto a CNC. The hold down can be preposterous, and the time to run those programs and to man the CNC and the waste coming off the CNC and the control. It isn't everything. It isn't for everything. But anyway,
those particular pieces you could have done one shot.
in this piece here,
Yeah.
possibly you might be right, but there may have been more waste or whatever. To be honest with you, I'm wondering if I should have got a pin router and did a lot of these shapes, because you can regress from that high technology and be better off. I'll leave it at that. But I understand what you're saying. It's how much do you want to try to get it up onto the CNC? It's a big question. It depends on the scale of your shop, how many experts you have around, how much hold down you have, even how good your vacuums are. So it's a very pertinent question, but that's how we answered it. It was about 50-50 CNC traditional work in the end. So after that, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.